Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore all things cinema. And today I will be unboxing this recent release from Imprint Films, Essential Film Noir Collection number 5. The films in this box set are Island of Doomed Men, The Red Menace, The Burglar, and 13 West Street. So let's just take a look at the side here. We have the spine numbers on the side, and there's the other side right there. The back, that's actually a still from The Burglar. The quote there, "There's only one way out of here, make 'em kill you." I'll just show you. I'll just unpop. I love the Imprint little lids here. They just pop right off, and then we can see what we've got inside. And so let's dive in to the box set. But before we go through each film, this was what's on the back. So it comes with a little sticky that sticks here. So what I do is I just pop it off and put it inside, and it fits comfortably there. But that gives you a rundown of everything that is inside each Blu-ray, as well as the special features, but all of this is also listed on the individual Blu-rays film to film. So I thought we would start backwards. So it goes from 262 to 265 as we see the spine numbers on the side. So I thought we'd go backwards and start with spine number 265, 13 West Street. I'll read the synopsis on the back. When Walt Sherrill is brutally beaten by a gang of angry teenagers, he decides to track the teens himself, hiring a private detective, buying a gun, and stalking potential suspects. The special features on this are 1080p high-definition presentation and a theatrical trailer. This starred Alan Ladd and Rod Steiger. Co-starred Michael Callan, Delores Dorn, with Kenneth McKenna and Margaret Hayes. It was based on the novel The Tiger Among Us by Lee Brackett. Screenplay was by Bernard C. Schoenfeld, I hope I have that pronounced right, and Robert Presnell Jr. It was directed by Philip Leacock. This was one of the last films that, Alan Ladd did before he passed away. I love this still there of Rod Steiger smoking with the blue tint over it. So let's dive in and see what we got. This is the inside here. I'll pop out the disc so we can get a better shot of Alan Ladd here. Get it before he gets beat up by some of the teens. Really, really beautiful. They do such a great job, Imprint. Here's the back, everything I just read out. If anyone wants to take a screenshot to take a look closer. But I had never seen this before, and it's a pretty good movie. This would be considered neo-noir because it's early 60s. This was released in 1962. I hadn't seen it before, and it's pretty good. What I like about the film is that it has a kind of sort of a Leopold and Loeb type of feel to it. Whereas the criminals here are rich teenagers, and they beat up Alan Ladd. And so it explores noir amongst affluent neighborhood and area and people with money. And so it explores actually privilege, not only from the teenager's point of view, but also Alan Ladd, because he begins to take matters into his own hands. He's frustrated with how Rod Steiger is handling the case. He feels that things are going too slow. He hires a private detective, and he sort of pushes Rod Steiger around a little bit. I mean, it's empathetic because you understand why he would want to find these teenagers. He's getting paranoid. He's getting scared. Every time he sees a teenager, he's wondering what they're up to. And then his wife, every time she sees someone young, she's also getting, scared and paranoid, which again goes into noir. Certainly, it's an ongoing theme is paranoia, which you see in a lot of film noir movies, including the neo-noir. But he pushes it a little too much. But the teenagers, is interesting because my impression anyways was that they felt that, as particularly the ringleader of the gang, they feel that they can get away with this because of their social status, right? And they're arrogant, and their parents think that they're just perfect angels, and they don't seem to mind, particularly when the ringleader is questioned by Steiger that he lied to the police. They don't really seem to think that's such a big deal. And so, again, it shows these privileged people and what they feel they can get away with. And I thought that was rather interesting because I can't think of too many film noir movies that had the criminals as being rich, teenagers or even adults. So, and unless I'm wrong, if anyone has an example, comment below. And I also particularly like the fact that, Rod Steiger as the cop, he's not, it's often in film noir where the cops are rough and tough, or they're also corrupt. He's actually a good cop, and he's fair and even-tempered, and he's very, very busy. I mean, this is interesting because you see that he has lots of cases, and this is what Alan Ladd's character gets impatient with as he keeps pushing Steiger to find these kids. And he's got a lot of cases going on, and he's trying to sort them out as best he can. And I hadn't seen that before in a noir. So this was pretty good. Recommend that. After that, this is spine number 264, The Burglar. This is probably the best film in the box set. So here's our front, and here's our back. If you want to take a screenshot, I'll read out the back, though, just for the plot. A burglar and his two associates set their sights on a wealthy spiritualist who has inherited a fortune, including a renowned emerald necklace from a Philadelphia financier. The special features 1080p high-definition presentation. There's an introduction by Martin Scorsese, just very brief, just around 2 minutes, which is quite nice. And a theatrical trailer. This starred Dan Duryea. I think that's how I believe I have his pronunciation right. Dan Duryea, Jayne Mansfield, Martha Vickers, with Peter Capel, Mickey Shaughnessy. I hope I have that right as well. Screenplay by David Goodis from his novel. Produced by Louis W. Kelman and directed by Paul Wendkos. This was released in 1957. And this was actually really good. I quite enjoyed the film. And what was interesting, one of the things, actually, I must note, I have never seen anything with Jayne Mansfield, and I know very little about her, but she is really good in this film. Actually, and Dan Duryea as well, really, really good, gives really good, really, really strong performances. And what's interesting in this film is that Dan Duryea was, we find out that he was an orphan, and a criminal actually took care of him and taught him to be a criminal. And he became, he was like a father. This man was like a father to him. And what we find out is that the reason he's so protective with the Jayne Mansfield character, because, the other criminals that he works with after they pull this heist, they want to get rid of her. And he doesn't want to. And what we find out is that he's so protective of her because that's what the man who took care of him told him to do, to really watch out for her, and he, before he died. And so he's very, very protective of her, and he'll do anything, including die, in order to protect her, which is pretty interesting and empathetic because he's a criminal. We start off, and even though he's the protagonist, he's a criminal. He's like the antagonist. He's very deeply flawed, but then we begin to empathize with him and even feel for him as he tries to protect her at all costs, because then a corrupt cop comes after him to take the diamonds he took. So it's interesting how, again, like a lot of film noir movies, there's no good guys, there's no bad guys, or good women or bad women. They're all deeply flawed, but you empathize with most of the characters. And one thing I thought was, because what happens is Jayne Mansfield's character is in love with him, and she wants to be with him, and he can't even bring himself to look at her. And, again, you have to sort of lean into it and come up with your own interpretations, the kind of movies I love the most. And, some people felt I was just reading online, oh, he's trying to resist her, but why? And now is that because he feels like he shouldn't because she's the daughter of the man who took care of him? Like, is it because he looks at her more like a sister and he doesn't have the heart to tell her he doesn't feel the same way? I thought maybe potentially he was gay, a gay character, and he didn't have the heart to, to tell her, right? I mean, this is, in the 50s where often they would make any kind of suggestion of anyone homosexual very, very subtle or coded, never explicit. It's another possibility there. So, you as the audience can bring your own interpretation to that. Just show you the inside here of the Burglar. And here's the sticker on the inside. Again, I love these cases that Imprint do. I thought this was really, really good. I really, really enjoyed it. So if you haven't seen it, highly recommend checking it out. After that, we have the Red Menace. Now, this is an important Blu-ray, I feel, to look at. Not because of the film, but for other reasons, which I'll get into. But let's just first take a look. So, very nice artwork. Here's the side. We'll go to the inside. Sticker. See, it's two of the actors in the film. It's actually a cool picture. Here's the back, which I'll read out as well. When a disgruntled ex-soldier gets no help from the Veterans Bureau, he is ripe for the influences of communists who lead him down the party line, but he soon meets up with disaffected party members who attempt to break out. Special features 1080p high-definition presentation from a 4K scan of the original 35mm nitrate negative, audio commentary by film historian Sam Deegan from 2023. I listened to a little bit of the commentary, and actually Sam, who's a wonderful writer, was on my show a couple of years ago, and I think she's fantastic. Hollywood on Trial, feature documentary narrated by John Huston from 1976, and The Hollywood 10, a short film from 1950. This starred Robert Rockwell, Han Axmann, Betty Lou Gerson, Barbara Fuller, Shepard Mencken, Lester Luther. Screenplay was by Albert Demond and Gerald Garrity. I hope I have that pronounced right. Story by Albert Demond. It was directed by R.G. Springsteen. And again, this came out in 1949. So what I would highly recommend people do is before you watch the film, watch the features Hollywood on Trial and the Hollywood 10 first. Now, what those are about, and I'm sure as anyone who's a film noir fan knows about the Blacklist, Hollywood Blacklist in the late 1940s, which started in 47 and went all the way until 1960. And what, as I'm sure a lot of you know, a lot of people who are blacklisted were writers and directors who worked in film noir movies, like Edward Dmytryk, for example, who was a fantastic film noir, made a lot of great film noir movies. And what I would do is I would watch that first, and because this film is an anti-communist propaganda film, which they began one of the first in Hollywood, which they began to make around this time. And for anyone, let's say you're here on this channel and you don't know anything about the Hollywood Blacklist or what this was all about, this is what the HUAC, this committee, started to do. It was to investigate communism in Hollywood. And, they were just absolutely monstrous and monsters. And they had people blacklisted. They weren't the ones who could blacklist people, which I found out last year. I actually about a year and a half ago I interviewed Larry Ceplair, who's written a decent amount of books on the blacklist. He's like a blacklist scholar, and we talked about his most recent book. I'll leave the link in the description box below, because it's very important to remember that, for one thing, to be a communist is not illegal. And secondly, the fact that you are a communist does not mean that you want to take over the government by use of violence. And so, as they explain in the documentary, in the 30s, many more and more people were joining the Communist Party as an answer to, for one thing, fascism, to fight fascism, and as an answer to the Depression. And there was a lot of union organizing going on, and people were, this was a real movement in the 1930s, and this made America, a lot of people like Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, very, very nervous. And so they got it into their minds that if you were a communist, that meant that you were like Stalin in Russia, and that meant that you wanted to take over the government and turn America into a dictatorship, and that you were anti-democracy. And for one thing, they never proved it. They had, to this day, have no proof that anyone wanted to do that. And so they basically just got it into their head that if you were a communist, that you wanted to overthrow the government. And so in the documentary, they show a lot of the hearings at the time with the Hollywood 10, and it was quite fiery, and they basically said, well, you don't have, they said, are you a communist? Like to people, like Edward Dmytryk and Dalton Trumbo. They basically, asked them if they were, if they ever were a communist, or if they were ever a part of the Communist Party. And they would, they didn't so much refuse to answer, but they said, well, you don't have the right to ask us that, because there's, as Dalton Trumbo said in the hearing, there's a reason why people fought for, when you vote for a candidate at an election, there's a reason why people fought for those to be secret ballots, right? So it goes against the Constitution. It goes against their rights as Americans to be asked such a thing. But these people had one thing in mind, which was to create chaos, was to get a lot of publicity, to go after Hollywood, and to just run anyone out of work and make sure that they were blacklisted if they either went to a meeting, or if they were a member of the party, or whether if they left the party. They just absolutely wanted to, out of fear and paranoia. This is also during when the Cold War was beginning, and so people were absolutely paranoid and afraid, and they destroyed many people's lives for just a bunch of absolute nonsense. And so that the documentary is great because they show how it began, why it started, and later on how they would use a series of fronts, the writers, in order to get their script sold. Like Martin Ritt, and he made the film The Front, which Larry and I spoke to, which again is at the link we spoke about, and in the link below we talked about the film The Front, which is a wonderful film. And this is what they did in order to make a living, or some of them went to Europe. And then, of course, in 1960, it all pretty much ended once Dalton Trumbo was credited as the writer for Exodus and Spartacus, and they interview Otto Preminger, who directed Exodus. They talk about that. But it's unbelievable that they were able to get away with this, and that the Supreme Court backed them. Unbelievable. To this day, it makes me very, very angry. But it's very important to know that backstory before you see the film, because this is an anti-communist film, anti-communist propaganda, and they use film noir as a way to tell the story. And so it begins, like a lot of film noirs, for one thing, in flashback. So these people trying to leave the Communist Party are on the run, and they're being chased by them, and so it has that feeling of doom throughout the film. We don't see them get killed or anything, but we know that they're in trouble. So throughout the film, that explains how this came to be, like a lot of film noir movies. And the main character, who was an ex-GI, is, he's just like a lot of film noirs. He's finding he's not getting the support he needs coming back from the war. So they did use that, but then he joins the Communist Party, and then he finds that they're all, they portray them as being these people who are just opportunists, who are just tricking members into thinking that they're going to, union organize, and they're going to demand that they get better wages, and they're going to stand up for minorities. They portray them as tricking them, making them think they'll do those things, but that they're ultimately laughing at everybody, and they just want to get more and more members to become a stronger party and to brainwash people, and ultimately they want to overthrow the government, and that they love Stalin and they want to turn America into a dictatorship. So they, again, it's a propaganda piece, and they were portrayed them as just being pure evil, and two of the characters are trying to get out of the party and everything. So, it does have elements that are interesting to it. And one of the characters, Solomon, who gets he leaves the party because he wants to be a communist, but he still believes in democracy, and the communists in the film are portrayed as believing in dictatorship and not democracy, and so he leaves the party, and this is some of the visuals are done really, really well, and of course he feels stuck, he feels claustrophobic. They find ways for him to lose his job and try to destroy his life, and just the photography was done quite well as he's roaming the streets, and people from the party who were his friends don't want to talk to him anymore, and he's alienated and alone and stuck. Again, it worked in photography and emotionally speaking as a noir, but obviously it's a deeply problematic film. And just listening to a little bit of what Sam Deegan said in the commentary, that's what she said. It's a problematic film, and so I'm looking forward to hearing more of what Sam has to say in the commentary. But yes, again, it's very important to watch that the documentary before you see the film. For anyone who doesn't know anything about it, you see the film first, you're going to be fed a lot of lies. But the Hollywood 10 is a short film, and I didn't know this, and they show a little bit of it in the Hollywood on Trial documentary. Was the Hollywood 10 made a short film appealing to the public, basically, when, because they got sentenced to prison for contempt of court, and for a year, and they wouldn't even allow them to make their case. And so they appeal to the public to say, that they're taking away our rights, not only our rights, but you as Americans, what are they going to do next? They're trying to take away our rights as citizens. And so that's really interesting, which I didn't know. One thing that they interview a musician in the documentary who was what he said to the interviewer, do you want to see what they said was subversive, that that this person was violent, trying to take over the government? And he played them a song he wrote, which he wrote because during the union movement, and it was just it's a song about union organizing and having fair wages and benefits and things like that. And he shows them the song, and this is what they said was subversive, because he was trying to organize a union. And what was funny at the end, made me laugh, was that at the end credits they play that song, which I thought was a perfect way to end the film. So crazy time, but again, really interesting document. This to me is less of a film and more of a document, to see a film like The Red Menace, to see what Hollywood was thinking at the time, right? And well, I mean, you don't even know if the Jack Warners and that supported the Blacklist, whether they really agreed or if they were doing it just to save their own ass, so to speak, because there was a lot of pressure on them. And so but this is the kind of movies they were making. So yes, an important document of, again, not a very good, not a good film. Interesting elements, but again, watch the documentaries first. Last on the list, The Island of Doomed Men. Really, really nice cover. Here's the side, and here's the back if you want to take a screenshot to read the plot, but I will read this as well. Peter Lorre plays Stephen Donnell, the owner of Dead Man's Island, who uses the off-the-radar colony as a place to keep paroled convicts as slaves. Undercover agent Mark Sheldon gets sent to the island and becomes trapped himself as Donnell's sadistic guards maintain a tight circle around the house and grounds. There's a 1080p high-definition presentation. This is, again, Peter Lorre in Island of Doomed Men with Rochelle, Hudson, and Robert Wilcox. It was written by Robert D. Andrews, produced by Wallace McDonald, and directed by Charles Barton from 1940. So this is not a film noir. And I imagine that this is 1940, really before that the movement began, that period began. And so, but I imagine they put it in the box set because it's sort of the root of film noir, because the photography at times is very out of the school of German expressionism, particularly at night. The use of dark photography, shadow and light, things like that. So, but the film itself is really not a film noir. It's a very, very short film. It's an hour and 7 minutes. Peter Lorre is always interesting to watch. He's such a fascinating character. So he's such a fascinating actor, that is, actor and character. But the film itself I did not like. It's not very, very good. It's actually really sort of a silly film with just things that, it's a lot of plot in an hour and 7 minutes, and there are things that I just felt were left out and too many holes. It just far too far-fetched and kind of just doesn't really work. But particularly one thing was that this island didn't even really look that terrible. I mean, it looks kind of bad, but it doesn't look as bad as if you go back to the early 30s and you look at those chain gang movies like I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, for example, where just the photography and the conditions looked absolutely brutal. I mean, this looks like a very much more of a sanitized island, and they sort of, it looks like a chain gang sort of thing, but they didn't really make it look as bad as some of those early 30s films, I felt anyways. But it's what's interesting is it shows the root of film noir, at least visually speaking. But this is the weakest film in the box set, in my opinion. But with that being said, you got, again, Red Menace is not very good, but it's an important document, particularly for people interested in the Blacklist. And if you're a film noir lover, as we know, many writers and actors, directors were blacklisted who were from that period, film noir period. And so it's important in that sense. But you got two, a really good film, The Burglar and 13 West Street, which is pretty good. So this is certainly worth getting, I feel, for all the elements that are in it. And I highly recommend getting it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful, as I mentioned earlier, this will fit right in there. Just pop it off the back. And voila, we have a box set. So I highly recommend checking this out. For anyone who has this box set, if you've gotten it, comment below and let me know what you think of the box set overall, each of the movies, the features. Comment below and let me know what you think. And I want to thank Imprint Films, which are also Via Vision and Imprint Films is the same company. I want to thank Imprint Films for sending me this beautiful box set, which any film noir lover should be proud to put this on their shelf. So thank you again. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is exclusive content that I create month in and month out. And as a subscriber, you are able to vote on polls and contribute to what I do on Patreon month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on the thanks link and you can leave a donation there if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner. To your top left in just a second, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Also click the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this episode. Also, you can also share the episode. All of these things are what produce traction to my YouTube channel. So I appreciate you watching, and thank you again, and I will see you in the next episode.